This is what New York wants. They are very proudly voting this guy in, especially the young people. Mm-hmm. And I think that they probably listen to the way that the right complains about him and warns about him and says that it's Muslim taqiyya. Maybe he's going to be Trojan Sharia law. I think they like that.
Well, I've got some good news, Mark. Before we get into tonight's show a little bit further, we've got a good friend and a special guest joining us. He's a good friend of mine, a great friend of the show, none other than a brilliant Republican strategist and pollster and great friend, the great Roger Stone. Roger, we appreciate you joining us this late at night, my friend.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I'm also, by the way, I follow Rasmussen polls very closely. I'm a big fan of Mark's work. I think he's one of the fairest, most objective, and I think shrewdest analysts of the numbers out there. So I'm glad to be with you. Of course, I'm also on my third martini. Anyway.
Oh, no.
I got some juice, too.
We're in trouble tonight. Raj, give us your assessment on what happened tonight. I see, in my opinion, a regression, Roger. If you look at that Virginia's race with Winston Sears, I see a regression back to the pre-Trump days, the country club era Republican days of Republicans who just don't embrace the MAGA agenda. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think it is a misnomer that has long been in American politics that the first off-year gubernatorial elections are a measure of how the national administration is doing. And that used to be true. I don't think it is true any longer. These are both reliably blue states that are demographically have been trending away from Republicans. Virginia in the 70s became a reliably conservative state, won by virtually all of the Republican presidential candidates, has only trended left with the implosion of new residents, particularly in Northern Virginia, and also the suburbs of Richmond, which were once solidly Republican and conservative, have become substantially more moderate. And New Jersey is an interesting state because Trump lost there by 15 points. It was a non-targeted state. That was in 2020. But in 2024, when it was still a non-targeted state, he only lost by 5. That demonstrates that, at least on paper, that Jack Ciattarelli could make it a race. And I actually give him great credit. I think he did make it a race against, huge demographic odds. And I thought he scored in the debates with her. His opponent seems like she's a better fit for Virginia than she is New Jersey. There's nothing New Jersey about her. She, of course, comes from the Hunt country in Morris County. She's not reflective of the Democrat machines in Newark and Camden and Bergen counties, Hudson County particularly. But I do think that there's a huge Democrat advantage here. Also disturbed me last week when the Passaic Board of Elections chairman, who happens to also wear a second hat as the Passaic County Democrat chairman, announced that there would be no cameras allowed in the paper ballot counting area, and there would be no log kept as to who came and went from that area. Welcome to New Jersey.
Mark, your home state.
Yeah, and it was a sunny, beautiful day. Probably would have been better for Jack if it had been raining. That's the problem, is that people look at those elections and they say, wow, isn't it stunning? New Jersey's purplish. And I think that they kind of forget that in 2021, people were really, really, really mad at Murphy here. Government overreach with COVID was a really big problem. Businesses were getting shut down all over New Jersey. And I think that that's one of the reasons that he did that well. And then people will look at his vote share and says, oh, well, he actually outperformed Trump. He only lost by 3%. Forgetting that it's an off-cycle election and he only got 1.2 million votes, and Donald Trump was able to convince 2 million people to vote for him in 2024. But then the other thing about 2024 is that I think we all have to acknowledge how bad the Biden presidency sucked. And that was a tailwind, I think, for Donald Trump in a place like New Jersey. And it's not something that's going to convert to, again, Jack's great, but I don't think that Republicans really have a believable plan for New Jersey that can compensate for the fact that most of these people probably just voted for Mikey Sherrill because they hate Trump. Like, that's probably really what I think happened. And they're going to continue to lose, especially among the young people who, if they were not voting, Jack Ciattarelli probably would have come a lot closer to winning and might have won.
I agree with most of that. I would say a couple things. First of all, I think Chitterelli's close finish was a freak accident when one of Phil Murphy's people actually blurted out the fact that he was going to put in place far more draconian lockdowns because of COVID-19. I think that caused a late rally for Jack, and he overperformed in that race. That did not mean the Republicans would automatically win the governor's race. But here's the other thing I can tell you: if the Republicans won both tonight, just by just a freak accident, the Republicans triumphed in both Virginia and New Jersey, the fake news media would say this was not a referendum on Trump and he was lucky. But when we lose both, which is what you would expect based on all of the research, all of the history, all the polling, and all of the trends, these are blue states, heavily blue states. They will say it's a repudiation of Donald Trump. So he can't really win. I don't think it's a measure particularly of anything other than the fact that high turnouts in all of these elections show that people are angry. And then you have the mess in New York, which is a whole separate question.
Real quick, we want to get to New York, Roger, but before we move on to New York, the issue I took with Chitterelli's race was an issue that I took with Carrie Lake's race and her numerous losses down in Arizona. Chitterelli was running on this national stage, and I turned on Fox News last Thursday or Friday, and I see Chitterelli in a town hall with Sean Hannity. And then I think to myself, I worked at Fox News, and I've seen the numbers of the people that watch in New Jersey. That's not how you win a race. How you win a race is doing exactly what Zohan Mamdani did in New York, and you go resonate with the people. That's the issue I took with Jack Chitterelli. In his last week, he spent on Fox News every single day.
Well, I guess I would argue that if you looked at your polling, you would find a disproportionate number of his base voters who are still important to keep energized or watching Fox. It's better than, and of course, the mainstream media that's going to reach perhaps a broader voter demographic isn't going to invite him to come. It's kind of the way it works. Look, I think New York is important because I think they're on the cusp of an absolute disaster. But the idea, Mark, I'd like to get your views on this. I've seen some of your polls. The idea that there's a three-person race and one of those people drops out, that all of their voters are going to move immediately to the remaining challenger is a falsity. It doesn't work that way, particularly in the case of Curtis Sliwa, who is the nominee of the Republican Party, who's won a Republican primary, who has running mates running for city council and civil court judges. And Andrew Cuomo's antipathy to traditional Republicans, having once said out loud, if you believe in the right to own a gun or you don't support abortion, there's no place for you in New York and you need to move. You need to leave. Now you add to that his record on COVID and the nursing homes and the no cash bail that currently plagues New York City and has caused its crime problem. This was signed into law by who? Governor Andrew Cuomo. This guy was a very weak, polarizing candidate from the beginning. I was not surprised when he lost the Democrat primary.
Yeah, spot on. It made me gross, like really feel dirty. The extent to which so many people came out and tried to, interfere and try and somehow prevent this from happening for New York, because this is what New York wants. They are very proudly voting this guy in, especially the young people. Mm-hmm. And I think that they probably listen to the way that the right complains about him and warns about him and says that it's Muslim taqiyya. Maybe he's going to be Trojan Sharia law. I think they like that. I think they like how Mamdani makes the right feel, and they don't really care that there might be negative ramifications for ushering socialism into New York, which is the capitalistic banking sector of the world. And so I don't know how much this guy's really going to be able to screw up. And I don't know if Trump should really get involved or not. But coming out there, imagine if Trump was the person that got Cuomo over the finish line. That's a slap in the face to the people who are, quite frankly, like, I'm dealing with COVID stuff right now. My mom has what I think is cancers from the third round of Moderna. Didn't want her to get it. And all of these people who had to die alone in a nursing home, it looks like the Republican Party is putting that in the rearview mirror when Donald Trump comes out and supports somebody like Andrew Cuomo. And I feel that, like, I do vaccine polling all the time. We just polled on remdesivir. Nobody cared. It's like it happened. We forgot about it. There's going to be no accountability. And I think the young people that voted for Donald Trump, I think that they were asking for sanity and accountability, and they weren't asking necessarily for traditional grandpappy conservatism, because I don't think that's the message they want to hear. And
Well,
Republican Party.
just to be clear, I mean, the most recent data I saw showed that 71% of New York voters were less likely to vote for a candidate endorsed by Donald Trump. But again, the notion that if Curtis Sliwa dropped out, all of his votes would go to Cuomo, or if Cuomo dropped out, all of his votes would go to Sliwa, that's a false premise. So for those who say it's Curtis Sliwa's fault that we elected Mamdani, I don't think they understand the true dynamic here. And in fact, surveys that showed that when you took Sliwa out, Andrew Cuomo still wasn't leading Mamdani. He was still trailing him, and he would continue to trail him. I don't think he would have beaten him in a two-person race because he had his unfavorable rating is extraordinarily high. This is a man who had to step down as governor ahead of impeachment for alleged sexual harassment, if not assault. He has the stain of having put all these COVID patients into the nursing home, something he was never charged with, but I think he should have been charged with. I think he lied about it in front of Congress under oath as well. This is a guy who was driven out of town, and he couldn't win the Democrat primary even with that vaunted Cuomo name. So I think he was kind of out of gas, polarizing, a weak candidate, not capable to do the kind of street campaigning that Sliwa and Mamdani did extensively, because Andrew Cuomo feared that piece of videotape that goes viral of somebody saying, "Hey, you, my grandmother died in a nursing home because of you." So he's basically forced Biden-like to campaign from his basement.
Yeah, wow.
We also saw, as Mark reiterated, Roger, the fact that we had everyone turning and pointing their fingers at everybody. Who is anybody to say? Lou Dobbs used to say to me all the time, Roger, when I would say the less of the two evils, he would tell me I'm an idiot because there's no such thing. They're both evil. Voting for Cuomo is cutting off your nose to spite your face because of Mamdani. The last time I checked, I think Mamdani is going to be the worst thing that's ever happened for New York. But the last thing I checked, Mamdani wasn't the one who put tens of thousands of people in nursing homes to die. He wasn't the one who had to resign, as you said, for sexual harassment. So sitting out here, people saying, why are we interfering in an election? Let the process play out democratically, as we saw in the elections. Republicans want to talk about election interference, but at the same time, they want to sit there and interfere in election. New York made its bed, Roger. You can't, in the 11th hour, come in and say, well, as Cuomo said yesterday, he's sorry for the COVID deaths, or as these Wall Street hedge fund guys want to come in and say, whatever. It's too late. The table is set. Sit down and have dinner.
Look, I see this billionaire, I guess, Bill Ackman, who's an investor. Mm-hmm. I'm sure he's a very nice guy. I'm sure he's a fine guy, but he keeps insisting that if Curtis Sliwa, the Republican, will just drop out, this would guarantee victory for Andrew Cuomo, and therefore it will be Curtis Sliwa's fault for running for mayor that Mamdani's election. I think that's an entirely unfair criticism because, as Mark knows, 100% of his votes are not transferable, and the data kind of showed that he'd still lose the race. So I think that kind of unfair commentary from the outside, and this last-minute Trump urging people to vote for Cuomo over the Republican nominee, I don't think it moved any votes. The data would indicate that Trump is obviously in an overwhelmingly Democrat city. This is not a Trumpian stronghold, to say the least. Republican registration is down to 10% in New York City. I actually thought it was 13, but I looked it up and I was wrong. This is an all-time low. This is a city that has only about 1/4 of the voters are Roman Catholics. A quarter is now Hispanic. Basically, the whites are only about 31% of the city. This is and of course the African American vote continues to be just less than about 1/4 of registered voters. It's not the same as the population breakdown, but this is an overwhelmingly city. The city has changed demographically very drastically since the days that Rudy Giuliani was elected mayor, and Republicans had to recognize from the beginning the odds of electing a Republican mayor in this city today, given its makeup, were very, very long to begin with.
As of 6 p.m. Eastern time, Roger, I think the vote total is at 2 million people had voted in New York City, which was the highest turnout since 1993. So as of now, it's probably broken a record. Who is this a referendum on, in your opinion?
Look, I think Mamdani, and Mark kind of referred to this in a way, or maybe perhaps it was you. Mamdani also benefits from this hope and change phenomenon, which younger voters buy into the narrative that he's He's a he's a grassroots phenomena, challenging the special interests, challenging the dark money, challenging the oligarchs. When in fact he's completely a creation of them. All of his campaign financing didn't come from small donations, not even the fake ones through Act Blue.
Yeah.
No, his donations came from a interlocking collection of 501c3s, 501c4s, nonprofit organizations, NGOs, and political parties moving money back and forth quite illegally. And the origins of this money are unknown. But this is a very skilled op to take over first the New York Democrat Party and to take over New York City. Now we are literally in the place where the next mayor may endorse the ideology of the very people who were told to attack the Twin Towers on 9/11.
Yeah, full circle. It's beautiful. And the part that blows my mind is how much the right projected onto everybody else its fear of socialism. And if you ask America what's better, free market capitalism or socialism, they'll say capitalism still, but the number is shrinking. But the people who are like afraid of democratic socialism is not as high as you would think. In fact, most people under 40 would vote for a Democrat socialist. It's like a 30-point lead almost. And in the city, it's even bigger. And so this idea somehow that they think there's a problem. It's like, no, you taught them to love multiculturalism. You didn't really teach them what real capitalism is. And they think even if they knew it, it's failed them. And economic populism is growing. People want more of it on both the right and the left. And unfortunately, they look at a guy like Mamdani, and I think that they say, well, it's different, but maybe he's got the answers because the systems has failed me. And I look at the people in power, and they're not going after the things that I need them to in order to change things the level they need to be changed. And I think that that's the problem because I don't think the right is equipped to really fight that fight right now. And so you're going to see more Mamdanis.
I think, I guess I agree that the epitaph that you're a Democrat socialist doesn't carry the heavy negative connotations that we might think it is. But when you ask people, do you think it's a good idea to defund the police? Or you ask people, do you think white people should pay higher taxes and a disproportionate amount of the taxes paid? Which is exactly what Mamdani said. Do you think that the prisons should be opened and everybody in them should be let out? Because as Mamdani said, the only reason you would incarcerate a criminal was to please the victims. He actually said that. So, I think that when people realize the impact of specific policies that Mamdani will enact and how dangerous it's going to be in New York City, as I think both capital will flee, large employers will feel, small employers will close down and flee. I think the real estate prices in the city will descend into, and I think there'll be a mass migration to places like Texas, Florida, even Dubai.
Dubai, isn't that where John
can only hope? I hope the pain is severe for them to teach them a lesson. The amount of pain that we saw under Joe Biden was good for about a 5.5-point move towards Donald Trump. And so it does change people's minds, but how much? And is it enough? And how fast enough? And is the change reversible? I don't know. Because they do, like you said, they don't like that stuff. They tell us they don't want the police defunded. But then they just vote Democrat anyways.
But that's because they're low information voters. Let's put it another way. I actually think that if Mamdani is elected tonight, and I believe he will be, I think Cuomo was never within range. So all of this hoopla over the last several days, he was never within range. He's a deeply flawed candidate for all the reasons we've already discussed. But I think that the deterioration of New York City, which is going to be relatively rapid, could very easily impact the New York's upcoming race for governor. Kathy Hochul, she was a gift from Andrew Cuomo. Everybody should remember that. Yeah. She was lieutenant governor handpicked by Andrew Cuomo, who ascended to the governorship, the most unpopular governor in polling that I have ever seen, polling in all kinds of districts. I always keep an eye on her approval ratings and her net unfavorable. It's extraordinary. I think she's endangered in the Democrat primary, although I'm not sure to who. From a generic point of view, if a accomplished Hispanic woman challenged her, she'd be toast, even without a name. I don't know that that person exists, but Elise Stefanik, I think, could be a serious candidate for governor because of these unique circumstances. Yes, this is a deeply blue state, and it is not easy to elect a Republican. I thought Zeldin ran as good a race as you could with limited resources. I think he worked very hard, and he came on at the end, and I think exploited some of the vulnerabilities. But this is a different dynamic. If New York City is burning, and I think there's high probability it will be, in a rhetorical sense, and perhaps even in a literal sense, this could very much impact the governor's race and put the governorship within reach.
We're getting the heart out for Roger here. I've just been told by Roger's esteemed colleague Enrique that he's got to go. Roger, where could people follow your show? This half hour, I mean, we're only supposed to go 15 minutes. It's already been a half hour. We appreciate Roger staying with us. Where can they watch your show?
Nice.
Roger's like the hardest working man in radio.
So you can hear us every evening during weekdays at 8 p.m. at WABCRadio.com. So it's the Stone Zone on WABCRadio.com at 77 WABC in New York. We're also syndicated in a number of other cities. You can always go to the Stone Zone, stonezone.com, and you can see interviews and read some of the print stuff I write, get all my books and products. And if you're a real masochist, you can go to stonecoldtruth.com for my Substack, where I wrote an incredible piece on what will happen in New York City if Mamdani is the mayor.
Looking forward to it. The great Roger Stone. You can also catch him on the Great America Show each and every week. Roger, great American, patriot. We'll see you soon, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be with you, Mark. And Mark, thank you for your fine work. You do a great job, and I always look forward to your commentary.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
See you soon, Roger. Thanks, brother.